Greetings, I'm Chuck Lennox.
Oh, Inessa, we can't hear the audio.
We could for like 1 second.
Still can't hear anything.
Could you please confirm if you hear the sound of the video? No?
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, we don't see it or hear it. I
could-
have it on my
Yeah,
computer. Would
I
you
was
like me to
gonna
try to do it?
Yeah,
That'd be great, because I have it too,
please
Paul.
share.
Song, you might have, I'm not 100% that I have the most current one pulled up right now. If you have it too, do you want to try to share yours?
Well, that would be funny if I had the most current one.
I mean, I can roll it right now. I got it up on screen.
Go, yeah, why don't you go ahead? That'd be awesome. Thank you.
There we go. Hang on a
Thank
second.
you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Chuck Lennox with the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation. I want to welcome you to our webinar series today, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. The Global Alliance is an umbrella organization of international interpretive groups around the world who are working together to support the growth of heritage interpretation as a profession and support the professional development of interpreters. I'd like to thank Time Looper and Agents of Discovery for their support of our translation service. In closing, I'd like to remind you that interpretation is a seed, not a tree. Let's plant some more seeds. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the webinar today.
Hello, I'm Beth Moravon, Chair of the Association for Heritage Interpretation, a UK membership organisation for natural and cultural heritage interpreters. I'm delighted to be part of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation Steering Committee and welcome you to our webinar series, Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, bonjour. My name is Sarah Rao, and I am the Vice Chair for Interpretation Canada. We are a community that recognizes, celebrates, debates, and inspires heritage interpretation in Canada, and we are thrilled to be taking part in the GAHI webinar series. We hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Kylie Christian, President of Interpretation Australia, and I'm really glad to welcome you to the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation's webinar series. We love being part of it, and we hope you love it too.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings to you all. My name is Nick, and I am the chair of the Interpretation Network of New Zealand. We are a network designed to bring together interpretation professionals and showcase the best practice happening around our beautiful country of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Please enjoy this webinar from our international colleagues in the Global Alliance of Heritage Interpretation. Kia ora.
Hello, I'm Helena Vicic, and I'm representing Interpret Europe, a European Association for Heritage Interpretation. We're very excited about this opportunity of sharing excellence across the world. We're digging up knowledge here in Europe that can have a potential to inspire colleagues from other continents, and vice versa. The inspiration in the Global Alliance is guaranteed to come back. Global Alliance of Heritage Interpretation with the webinar series is a treasure box of inspiration and good practice that promotes high standards of heritage interpretation globally.
Hi there, I am Paul Caputo, Executive Director for the National Association for Interpretation. We serve 6,000 heritage interpreters in the United States. We are thrilled to be one of the organizing partners of the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation year-long free webinar series. Enjoy! I can confirm that that was not the most current version.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening. This is Chuck Lennox again with the Global Alliance for Heritage Interpretation. Welcoming you to our webinar today as part of the series of Global Excellence in Heritage Interpretation. And today's webinar is hosted by the National Association for Interpretation. And the title is Jazz, Gospel, and Civil Rights. Please put any of the questions you might have in the chat, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the talk. And let me pass the screen over to Paul Caputo, Executive Director of NAI, to introduce our speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I am thrilled to be here with our guests here today and anyone who's watching this in the future. I am in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is where NAI's headquarters are located. It is the traditional and ancestral homes of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Ute nations and people. It was a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other native tribes. And we recognize that the indigenous peoples as original and current stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. Thank you so much for Jade and Karen for being here. This is a fascinating topic, the truly American art form of jazz music as interpreted in New Orleans at the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park. Jade and Karen were guests recently on the NAI podcast called What's Up Interpreters. So Song and I got to speak with Jade and Karen about the incredible work that they do. Jade is a New Orleans native, has an extensive musical background, which enhances her unique interpretive style. She's the only African-American woman park ranger at the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park, a storyteller, a historian, an entertainer. Jade's mission is to help others appreciate the rich cultural tapestry of New Orleans and discover its musical heritage through personal connections. Karen is not a native of New Orleans, but as they say, she got there as soon as she could. You can absolutely see Karen's love for New Orleans and the interpretive work that she does. She's a park ranger at the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park and the Jean Lafitte National Historical Park and Preserve in New Orleans French Quarter. And she loves to share her love for New Orleans jazz and history and culture. She has also, outside of New Orleans, led guided excursions to national parks all across the country with Gate 1 tours and has worked at several parks within the National Park Service. Karen will tell you she dabbles on the clarinet, does not have extensive musical background, but is passionate about providing a platform for the elder statespeople of New Orleans jazz. And so I am so looking forward to feeling the love for New Orleans and learning more about this uniquely American art form of jazz. So Karen and Jade, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to try to share our PowerPoint. Jade, do you want to give them a little intro about our park and what we do?
Yes, of course. Hello, good afternoon or good morning to all the folks that are joined. Again, Karen and I are at New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park that is now in a combined visitor center with Jean Lafitte National Historical Park and Preserve. And our mission is to instill a public appreciation, for the history and culture of the Lower Mississippi Delta region, and as well be a global leader in promoting and protecting our rich American art form. So every Tuesday through Saturday, we have programs that highlight our mission and as well bring in New Orleans-based musicians to interpret and perform jazz. So it's the only park in the entire park service that is dedicated to preserving jazz as an American art form. And this presentation today is to shed light on the connection between jazz, gospel, and civil rights through the lens of two of some of the greatest musicians that have influenced and impacted American music, which is Louis Armstrong and Mahalia Jackson. So I'm going to pass it on over to Karen to talk a little bit more about these two pioneers.
Great. Thank you, Jade. And can everyone see the PowerPoint with the picture of Mahalia Jackson and Louis Armstrong up there?
Yep, it looks great.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm going to step us back in time a little bit to kind of set the stage, the political, cultural, social context of the world in which Mahalia Jackson and Louis Armstrong grew up in. So I'm going to take us back to the end of the Civil War, the post-Civil War period in Louisiana, and in the country was in some ways a moment of great possibility, of great hope. In Louisiana in 1868, the new Louisiana State Constitution was the most progressive constitution in the country. This poster shows 29 African-American members of that Louisiana State Constitutional Convention. And that new constitution for the state granted Black men the right to vote. It outlawed segregation. And in fact, the state of Louisiana elected Oscar Dunn as lieutenant governor. The first African-American lieutenant governor in the country was here in Louisiana during Reconstruction. This history has largely been literally wiped out of our history books. In New Orleans, we had a integrated police force. We had desegregated schools. We had integrated public transportation. So it was a real moment of hope and forward progress. But with that forward progress came a big pushback. White leagues were formed. There were massacres. And before very long, by 1877, Reconstruction had ended in the United States. U.S. troops were pulled out of Louisiana, and segregation was setting back in. One of the laws that was passed was called the Separate Car Act. This mandated separate railroad cars. Before the Civil War, in Louisiana, we'd had basically a three-tier system of free white people with all rights and responsibilities of citizenship. We had a large population of free people of color here, probably the largest population of anywhere in the country, with some rights and responsibilities of citizenship, but not full rights. And then we had enslaved people of color. That free population of Creoles, Afro-Creoles, primarily French-speaking people, were well educated. A lot of them were lawyers and doctors and newspaper publishers, as well as craftspeople. And when these segregation laws started coming around, they formed a committee, the Citizens Committee, and they fought this. And in 1892, they got Homer Plessy, who was a very light-skinned, biracial man who was classified as a person of color. He got on a whites-only streetcar, identified himself as a person of color, and was arrested. So this was 1892. This was a full 60 years before Rosa Parks sat down in the whites-only section of the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. But there was a civil rights movement happening here in Louisiana. They took the case to the Louisiana Supreme Court and eventually to the U.S. Supreme Court. That case is known as Plessy versus Ferguson. And the Supreme Court in that case declared that separate but equal accommodations were constitutional. And that is what led the way for segregation to really clamp down throughout the United States in a really intense way. So that Supreme Court decision was 1896, and Louis Armstrong and Mahalia Jackson will be born in the very early 1900s. So really in the wake of this tremendous social and political upheaval that's been happening in the country. But at the same time, there is a whole world of culture happening in New Orleans, and I'm going to turn it over to Jade to talk about that.
All right. Thank you, Karen. And so, uh, again, the political and social world was playing a pivotal role into how Louis Armstrong and Mahalia Jackson started to perceive things. But again, the musical world was also playing a pivotal role. During the 19th century, there was this place called Congo Square, or Place de Congo. And this was a place where, in specifically 1817, where the mayor um, had designated this place to be a gathering place for enslaved people to practice, to gather, to share their drumming, to share their dances. And there was this somewhat freedom that was allowed to take place. And that spirit carried all the way over into the late um, 19th century, and where we get the marching bands, get our brass bands playing in jazz funerals. You have the opera houses. New Orleans was the first place to have a French opera house. And then you also have the Storyville, where you have your piano players like Jelly Roll Morton playing this uh, ragtime and ragtime music, but also this hop music. It was called hop music at the time. Jazzers, it really wasn't a term that was used amongst musicians at the time, but this term comes along a little bit later. But you have, again, Congo Square that has the spirit of freedom that influences the marching bands, that influences the classical world, and also, again, Storyville. Now, in Storyville, you had, again, your bars and brothels where musicians would play, and it was a place for musicians to hang out and, again, play that style of music. Um, Now, Louis Armstrong grew up in the red light district, which is Storyville. And so this environment was still taking place at his birth. Mahalia Jackson, on the other hand, did not grow up exactly in Storyville. She didn't have the same upbringing as Louis Armstrong, but she was influenced by the music of Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith. Now I'm going to take a quick turn and talk a little bit about the classical sound. So I want to go over to the next slide. All right, so here is a video of the Fisk Jubilee Singers singing "I Ain't Gonna Study War No More." Now, I'll demonstrate what Mahalia Jackson, what her sound was like, but she took a different approach to singing Negro spirituals. There's an example of her singing "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child" into "Summertime," which is "Summertime" was considered a secular song. It was used in musical, but this approach to to Negro spirituals was more of on the classical side. And here's an example of it. I'm gonna go ahead and press play.
Going to lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, and study war no
Okay, that's good. So you got a good idea of what that classical approach is. Very refined. It's a style that's more for observing, right? You go to a concert and you expect the singers to perform it in that manner. But again, Mahalia Jackson and Louis Armstrong grew up in this world where classical, marching band music, music from Storyville was all in one place. They knew no separation of styles. So what Mahalia Jackson did is she swung the rhythms. She used bent tones. She used more of a emotive expression in her style of singing. So I'm going to give you an example of Summertime, and Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child to show you her approach. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long ways from home, a long ways from home. Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy is rich, and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. So that's the style. In the beginning, I approached the song with a little bit of the classical technique, and singing more towards of the melody in the style of the Fest Jubilee singers. But towards the end, I added um, the vocal inflections that Mahalia Jackson would do. Again, she was inspired by this environment where genres knew no separation, and she was listening to the blues singers like Ma Rainey and Betsy Smith, and just the musicians of her time. Um, Now I'm going to swing it back over to Karen to talk a little bit about Louis Armstrong, a little bit, and I'll pick
Yeah,
that.
great. Thank you, Jade. As Jade was saying, both Lewis and Mahalia grew up in this rich cultural environment, and the sacred and the secular are very intertwined in the music of New Orleans. And so Lewis, was delivering coal to the brothels as a little kid. He spent a lot of time with a Jewish family, the Karnofskis, who almost adopted him, took care of him a lot. He would listen to the spiritualist churches, especially lots of like the uh, almost the same blues form in the gospel music in those churches, the growls and the shouts, and the tambourine playing. And he was also listening to all the musicians, the brass bands, the piano players. His biggest influence was King Oliver. This photo, Louis Armstrong is standing next to King Oliver, seated in the chair. And King Oliver was called King Oliver because he was the best cornet player of his time. And Lewis would start parading in the church parades and second lines with King Oliver when he was still a kid, and he would literally carry King Oliver's cornet when King Oliver was taking a break. And one of the things about the parades was it allowed Black folks in New Orleans, the musicians specifically, to go to places in the city they would not otherwise have been able to go. So it was a form of freedom to take to the streets in New Orleans. Louis Armstrong was arrested when he was about 12 or 13 years old for shooting off a gun on New Year's Eve. He was put into what was called the Colored Waifs Home, and that's where he got his first formal musical education. He played cornet in the band there. Soon he was the leader of that band. Then he came out. He started playing on the riverboats, going up and down the river, the Mississippi River, where he learned to play for dancers, following pretty strict written music, but he was also playing by ear in bands around town. So as part of the Great Migration, King Oliver went up to Chicago, started playing in his band up there with a lot of New Orleans musicians, and eventually King Oliver would send for Louis Armstrong to join his band. So he joins his band, and he is going to meet in that band Lil Hardin. Lil is playing the piano in the middle. Louis Armstrong is in front, kneeling, playing a slide trumpet, kind of a novelty instrument for this promotional photo. King Oliver is in the back playing the trumpet above Louis Armstrong. Everybody else in this band is from New Orleans as well. And Louis Armstrong is the number 2 cornet player, number 2 to King Oliver. He's kind of interested in Lil. Lil is not so interested in Louis to begin with, but she has a really good ear, and she realizes that Louis has a lot of potential. And as their relationship is developing, she basically tells Louis, you know, I'm not going to get married to anybody who's a number 2 cornet player. You need to go out on your own and be the leader of your own band. Louis kind of hesitated because he had looked up to King Oliver for so long as his mentor and his idol and his teacher. But he did eventually, at Lil's pushing, go out. And by the middle of the 1920s, he forms the Hot Fives and the Hot Sevens bands. And he does a series of recordings with these folks, again, all New Orleans musicians, plus Lil Hardin. And by 1928, he records a song called West End Blues. And West End Blues changes jazz music entirely. So before West End Blues, jazz music that came out of New Orleans was basically collective improvisation. That means everybody in the band is playing the same song at the same time. Everybody knows the melody, they've internalized it, and then everyone plays a variation on that melody all at the same time. So the trumpet is really going to carry the lead, go way up high. The clarinet is going to trill and add riffs. The trombone is going to kind of rip up with that slide down low. The tuba is going to keep the beat. The drums are going to keep the beat. And everybody's going to be listening to everybody all at once. When Louis Armstrong records West End Blues, he records something that no one had ever recorded before. And I'm going to play this beginning of this song for you. So that introduction to that song was a long improvised solo. And that is one of the things that Louis Armstrong brought to jazz music, the idea of solo improvisation. And he does it at such a high level that beginning of that song is so complicated that trumpet players are still listening to that and emulating that today. Louis Armstrong probably could have stopped right there, and he'd still be talked about in the jazz world. But he went on to play for decades after, and really pushed the jazz music forward. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Jade to talk about Mahalia Jackson again and how she moved the music forward on her side.
Yes. So Mahalia Jackson had again, a different but similar upbringing as Louis Armstrong, both growing up in this musical um, world of New Orleans. Now, Mahalia Jackson's is about 10 years, 9 to 10 years younger than Louis Armstrong. She grew up in the Black Pearl neighborhood in New Orleans with her mother and father. But her mother passed away when Mahalia was only 5 years old. So she grew up with her aunt. Now her aunt was a strict and religious woman and often like disciplined Mahalia Jackson pretty harshly. And so there would be often times when Mahalia Jackson had to leave school to work as a maid. But she didn't let the treatment of, her aunt stop her from going about life and taking the gospel. I think the music of New Orleans was kind of like her therapy in a way. So during the Great Migration, Mahalia Jackson moved up to Chicago, and she joined the Greater Salem Baptist Church, where she met Thomas Dorsey. Now, Thomas Dorsey is considered to be the father of gospel music. Um, she was singing in that church, taking, the songs from New Orleans, from home, and in her beautiful voice with her to Chicago and sing with Thomas Dorsey and his using his arrangements, and that collaboration really started to develop her sound. Um, Now Mahalia Jackson didn't receive international and national fame early on in her career. It took her a little while. It wasn't until she recorded "Moving Up a little higher" is when she started to gain that like national recognition, and that wasn't until about 1940. Again, she was born in 1911, so it took a while. Um, but Earlier I mentioned that Mahalia Jackson blended summertime with "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child." This was the only example in case where she blended these two genres. She had a personal conviction to only sing gospel music, and I think that's because she had such a rough upbringing and a harsh childhood. She chose to only sing gospel in honor of her vow to God and to the Lord. So um Mahalia Jackson went on to do amazing things, um, and uh, and that was by bringing gospel to the world. Um, and Another thing is, not only was she bringing gospel to the world, but she was playing a pivotal role in the civil rights movement by being at the meetings with Martin Luther King Jr., by singing at the meetings, and although she wasn't credited for being a big financial contributor, we don't know that um, in detail, but she was at the forefront, being present, being vocal, and using her influence and her power in the civil rights movement.
Yeah, so as we move into this civil rights era of the 50s and 60s, Mahalia and Louis Armstrong took really different approaches. As Jade said, Mahalia was at many of the organizing meetings, the mass meetings that would happen, and she would sing to give the crowd courage, to get them to have a feeling of solidarity and strength. And Louis Armstrong was much more behind the scenes with his support of the civil rights movement. He was sometimes criticized for being too much of an entertainer. He was an amazing entertainer. He had an incredible smile. And so sometimes younger people in the movement just saw him as an old person playing for the white audiences. But what he was doing behind the scenes was giving money to civil rights activists. He sometimes would put money, physical cash, into a suitcase and give it to somebody to take down to organizers in the South. He said he wasn't marching in the streets because if he got hit in the mouth, his career would be over. He was also doing things with contracts. So he was such a huge star. And for years, he had to play for whites only audiences. And often he couldn't stay at the hotels where he would perform. So he's the first Black musician in the United States that got it put into his contract that he would be allowed to stay in the hotels where he performed. So he pushed that door open. And he refused to play many venues in the South. He loved New Orleans, but for decades, he did not come back to New Orleans and play concerts because until the civil rights laws of the 1960s were passed, the audiences in New Orleans were segregated, and he just refused to play to segregated audiences. Also, his band from early on was integrated with white and Black musicians playing together, and so that also restricted the places that he could play. But he did finally have to speak out when the crisis was happening in Little Rock, Arkansas. The Supreme Court had ruled in the Brown v. Board of Education that separate but equal was unconstitutional. That's what repealed finally the Plessy versus Ferguson decision. Schools were supposed to be desegregating. And in Little Rock, Arkansas, they were blocking the 9 high school students that were trying to get into the high school. And so he actually writes a letter to a telegram to Eisenhower. He gives an interview where he says, "I've had a beautiful life in music, but I feel the downtrodden situation the same as any Negro. My parents and family suffered through all of that old South, and things are new now, and no prejudiced newspaper can make me change it. What I've said is me. I feel that. I was hot. I'm still hot." He was just couldn't handle this situation. So he sends a telegram to President Eisenhower, and he writes just like he spoke, "The President, the White House, Mr. President, Daddy, if and when you decide to take those little Negro children personally into Central High School along with your marvelous troops, please take me along. Oh God, it would be such a pleasure, I assure you." So he's trying to push, and he's starting to give more interviews. So this is him talking about the situation in Little Rock, and also he had been asked to be an ambassador, a jazz ambassador by the State Department to tour in Russia and other countries. And so you'll hear him talking about that as well.
Prevent colored students from going to the school their own children attend. Picketing the school, they clash with the police.
What are you going to tell the Russians when they ask you about the Little Rock incident?
It all depends what time they send me over there. I don't think they should send me now unless they straighten that mess down south. And for good. I mean, not just to blow over, to cut it out, I think. Because they've been ignoring the Constitution, although they taught it in school. But when they go home, their parents tell them different. Say you don't have to abide by it because we've been getting away with it 100 years. So nobody tells on each other, so don't bother with it. So if they ask me what's happening, if I go now, I can't tell a lie, that's one thing. You know, it's lying the way I feel about it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Armstrong.
So he actually delayed being an ambassador for the United States for a number of years until he felt like he could more adequately represent the United States. And in his music, he didn't address the social situation very much, but he did record and perform one song called Black and Blue. And I'm going to play you a couple of snippets of this.
Thank you very much, folks. Here's one of our recordings. Beautiful number called Black and Blue. Cold empty bed, springs hard as lead, feel like going dead, wished I was dead. What did I do to be so black and blue? Even the mouse ran from my house. They laugh at you, scorn you too. What did I do to be so black and blue?
So he put it right out there with that song. I'm going to send it back to Jade to talk about Mahalia Jackson and more of her role in the civil rights movement.
Yes. Again, just piggybacking for what I said earlier, Mahalia Jackson, one, had a moral conviction, and that was to primarily sing gospel music, and she used her voice in the civil rights movement. And she was an ally with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. During the mass meetings. And two of these great meetings were or organized events was for the Montgomery bus boycott and also the 1963 March on Washington. And she performed I've Been Buked and Scorn. But there's two things that she did. So I want to play the video first, and then I'm going to talk about another moment during the March on Washington. Is this the video? Oh wait, no, I'm gonna go back. I'll go back. I'm sorry. I thought that was the video. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it should be the video. I can play the video if you like.
Okay, yeah, play the video, then I'll talk about the next thing.
Okay.
So here is her using her voice as a moment of upliftment for the people. right? So her voice alone, and credit to the organist, but her voice is really moving all those thousands of people that were on the Washington monument that day. Now, when I was growing up and I was being taught about the March on Washington, that I was taught about the I have a dream speech, right? We recognize this speech, we know this speech, but what's not often talked about is how Mahalia Jackson played a pivotal role in making that moment happen. Because Mahalia Jackson had been an ally with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., because she had been attending the meetings, because she knew his speech style and how he could deliver a speech. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was having a moment in realizing that he wasn't connecting with the audience, and the prepared speech that he had wasn't um, wasn't reaching, Mahalia Jackson shot it over to him in his ear and said, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And from that moment, this is how we get and how basically history was, changed. The March on Washington could have, went a different way if Mahalia Jackson hadn't encouraged Martin Luther King to give that speech. And so not only did she do that, but I misspoke earlier, but she did donate. She financially supported the civil rights movement by doing concerts. And raising money, and also donating some of her own funds. So she was present. She was at the forefront of being in these meetings and using her voice and iconically shifting that speech so that we get the I have a dream speech. Um, Now, Mahalia Jackson and Louis Armstrong their took the upbringing and took all of their experiences and contributed to American music and the civil rights movement in a powerful way. And so towards the end of their career, they're getting older. um, and well, go to the next slide. They're getting older, and comes a time where they need to be honored. So the Newport Jazz Festival is honoring Louis Armstrong for his contribution to to American music, and they invite Mahalia Jackson to perform. But before I move on, I want to ask Karen, did you have anything else to like add, or am I good?
No, I just want to reiterate what you said. They took their whole life experiences, they took the struggles of New Orleans, they took all this music and culture of New Orleans, they uh, gave it to the world. They pushed the music forward. They became probably some of the most famous Americans worldwide, incredibly wealthy, and at the same time they stayed connected to their communities. And so this class clip is sort of just a celebration of their lives and their careers and their contributions to our world.
Yes. So here in this last video, you'll hear Mahalia Jackson talking a little bit about Louis Armstrong. What's funny is that they grew up in New Orleans, but they didn't seem to cross paths when they were during their childhood. But later on in their careers, and once they started to work as professional musicians, they started to cross paths. But I think it's a good time to just play the video.
Great.
I want to dedicate a song to a very great man that has given America one of the great arts of the world, jazz. His great contribution, not only America, but the world. And I want to sing this song because he happened to be from my hometown. man with a warm smile, a man that everybody loves. And if you don't love him, I don't think you really know how to love. And I want to dedicate this song to him, Just a Closer Walk with Thee, to Louis Armstrong.
Wonderful, baby. Wonderful. We don't want to keep in the rain. Yes. Just a closer walk. Oh, hello, darling. Swing it, mama. Oh, look at them trucking on out that gate. Now them full of red beans and rice. What a evening, folks. Beautiful evening. Won't keep in the rain. Walk with me, I'll bow down in the oh, listen to them New Orleans cats swinging on in there. Everybody sing. Oh, God, when we're together.
So even there at the end, you can see how the jazz music and the gospel music are just completely intertwined in New Orleans jazz. So we will we'll conclude there, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, what I love most about that video is it's again what Karen said. It's a great example of how Mahalia Jackson is still singing gospel, but Louis Armstrong is recognizing that she's swinging those notes. You have the Eureka Brass Band being invited onto the stage, and they're performing one of the jazz funeral standards, which is Just a Closer Walk with Thee. This song is still played in jazz funerals today, and that's how rich the tradition is. And again, they both just took their upbringing, that New Orleans spirit, into their music and brought it into American music, brought it into the civil rights. And we have, great examples to live by.
Karen and Jade, this is amazing. I certainly agree with the comments in the comment box about the chills that are being sent up and down our spines as we're watching these videos, and the context that you've provided for them has been amazing. Um, we have just a few moments here, so we have a couple of questions that maybe we can get to. We might go a couple minutes over if folks are okay with that. The first question is a basic one. Is this presentation part of an exhibit at the park? And if not, it should be.
It should be. We actually we don't have this in an exhibit. We do concerts 5 days a week at the New Orleans Jazz National Historical Park. So we don't do this specific program every day, but we hit on the origins and the development of jazz pretty much every day. The park has a plan to redo our visitor center next year, maybe. So that more of that will be built out into a permanent exhibit if we're able to do that.
Okay. So I have 1 minute until the top of the hour here, but I'm going to see if I can get 2 questions in for you. Chuck asked, do visitors to the park today know anything about these musicians, which is a version of a story, or sorry, a version of a question that we had for you, which was, how do you connect these stories of music and civil rights with modern audiences? So I'm gonna lump those 2 into one question.
I think a lot of musicians that come to our concerts at least know about Louis Armstrong and know that he's a trumpet player. They may not make the connection that he's from New Orleans. Mahalia Jackson, not so much. I don't think a lot of people know about Mahalia Jackson, at least the younger generation, maybe the older generation that comes to our park. We try our best to connect these stories through our Ranger Talks, because the programs that we have at the park also feature New Orleans-based musicians, and we get a different crowd and like different musicians from different perspectives and backgrounds. We don't always get the chance to capture their 2 stories, but at least at the park staff, from the park staff perspective, we try to incorporate Louis Armstrong and Mahalia Jackson through the Ranger Talks.
Okay. All right, one last question here, and then we will let you and everyone else go here. How do you all, as interpreters, balance the difficulty, the pain of these stories, these histories, with the joy of the music? I mean, I was watching you guys move, during the music. It was really fun to watch you both sort of, bopping along with the music there. There's a real joy in the music, but the stories, the history is so difficult and so painful. How do you manage that balance as interpreters?
Go ahead, Karen.
I mean, I think for me, the stories make the music even more meaningful, right? I think a lot of people come to New Orleans and they think, yeah, it's a good time, everybody has fun, parades just break out. And I think when you know a little bit more about the history and where this music comes from, that this music was made by a people who were literally declaring their humanity in the face of people who wanted to strip it from them, it's a richer experience. So that's where I come from.
And I guess for me, I like to think about putting myself in their shoes, but also as a human being, and I try to think about what's happening today. You know, we see a lot of oppression happening today, and even just from the little small moments of things that bug us or hurt us, we might put on a song, that just makes us feel better, or go to a concert. We've all experienced those harsh days at some point, no matter what that thing that has caused us to feel that way. We all know what that's like. And so that makes it a little bit more tangible when trying to understand and find the joy in these harsh moments, because I know what it's like to just to 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 not be treated, fairly. And so, but I know that if I put on this song, if I do this thing, go for this walk, then things should just become a little bit easier to manage.
Well, it's so impactful and so inspiring. I would encourage everyone who's here right now with us to go check out Karen and Jade's appearance on the NAI podcast, What's Up Interpreters, just earlier this month. So thank you, Karen and Jade, for joining us once again. It's been really inspiring and really fantastic. So thank you, and for everyone watching in the future, glad you found it, because it's this has been a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
There
Hi,
you go.
everybody. Come see us in New Orleans.
Yes, come on by. Get some cafe beignets.
Cafe Beignet, not Cafe Du Monde. That's the.
Oh, come on now.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.